Welcome to Start Lines and Swag Bags, presented by the Flying Pig Project. The airing of this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and is not intended to replace advice from any medical, professional, or training staff. The Flying Pig Project is not affiliated with or in partnership with any other business, running clubs, coaches, or medical professionals. Thank you for listening and your support.
Hello, welcome to this episode of Start Lines and Swag Bags. I don't really have anything clever to say at the moment, so that's new. Anyway, tonight's guest is a family friend. His name is David, and as you'll hear him, he'll pronounce his last name for me because I can't. And I've known David for years. He, as you'll learn in the episode, he met my sister when he was living in Boston. And basically, I mean, he's a member of our family. He comes to all our family dinners. He definitely brings some comic relief because how many times can you really hear the same family story over and over and over and over and over? You get it, right? What I love, though, is he does acknowledge I've been asking him to come on the show. He was one of the originals that I asked, but he wasn't running at the time and therefore felt that he had nothing to bring to the conversation. And we did come down to a point that he was either going to do it or he wasn't. And then he started running because he registered for the Chicago Marathon. And he gives me a little bit of credit for that. And, you know what? Just listen. You'll get it. Anyway, thank you for supporting the Flying Pig Project. Thank you for supporting Start Lines and Swag Bags. Embrace the crazy to unlock a world of possibilities. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. All right. Welcome to another episode of Start Lines and Swag Bags. It's been a few weeks since I've been in the host seat, so I'm easing my way in. I have brand new lighting, which I called similar to something you'd use in like a criminal interrogation because it's really bright, but I think it makes my coloring better. And if you're just listening to this episode, you don't care anyway. So anyway, welcome. This guest, here's the thing. He is an OG, and here's why he's the OG. Back in September, August, I don't know, when I decided I was going to do a podcast, I sent an email to 11 people. And 10 of those people have already done their episodes like last year. And this is the one holdout that now he is on the show. Everybody, please welcome my friend, David.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me and being patient and waiting for me.
Well, I know that this is going to be a good episode, but we have to get some, baseline stuff out of the way that I say to everybody. First, tell us about yourself.
Okay. My name is David Svodage, and you didn't pronounce it because you're probably afraid of it. So I'll take care of it. And for the purposes of this production, we're going to go forward with David Z. And I native Chicagoan. I grew up in Chicago, blah, blah, blah. I moved away from Boston. I moved back 12, counting is hard, 14 years ago. And I'm a realtor, and I am a late in life runner. I saved my knees. I saved my body. I didn't abuse it. I decided that I was going to really steal my resources so they were not wasted in a misspent youth on cross-country teams or track teams or all that nonsense. So I can tell the story of how I got running, but that's so that's me. So yeah, I'm a runner.
Well, interestingly enough, thank you for pronouncing your last name because, yeah, I mean, we've known each other for years.
Yeah,
years.
Probably more than most people on your podcast.
Decades, even.
Indeed.
And
The early
I,
aughts.
yeah. Okay, but how did you find your way, really to my family?
Well, I have a very good friend, my friend Howe, and he purchased a new construction condo. He lived on the second floor, and a very pleasant woman who also happened to be from Chicago, just like I am, bought the first floor, and her name happened to be Lauren Patalis. She happens to be your sister. So through that friend, I met your sister. We became fast friends, a lot of interest. We've traveled to probably, I don't know, half a dozen countries together, seen a million plays together. And so, yes, so that's how. And then I remember that you and your ex came to visit Boston, probably with the same level of enthusiasm that I brought to coming onto this podcast initially. I still remember the moment of meeting you. I don't think I think it was, you were not so excited about the trip. And you were sitting on the couch, and we were probably a bit much. And you did not embrace me like you were embracing a lot of things. I mean, one of the neat things about following you in your running path and following these podcasts is you found your tribe and you've really found your slot. And it's really wonderful to watch. You weren't quite there yet then.
So that's like 20 years.
Yep. 20 plus years.
How long? I was trying to come up how to phrase this. How long do you think it's been? It's been many, many years now that you are now the required sixth person, seventh person, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, seventh person at our dinners, at family events.
I am the Christian Elijah who comes to your events. The reserve chair is actually taken by David Z. Sorry, Elijah. It's available. I think I'm the distraction. So I'm like the jester, the comic relief. It's been probably at least a decade. Certainly, it was probably evolving when I was still, because I lived in Boston from '99 until 11. I moved back here, and then when I started visiting your sister, and when your mother has an agenda and a schedule, so part of I need to play along with that schedule. So going up to seeing them, and I love them, and they're delightful as your whole family, and if that involves a family meal. So yes, so at least probably 12, 13 years.
All right. So when I asked you back in September of last year to be on the show,
Yeah.
why did you tell me no? I don't remember.
Well, I am an all or none person, and and I'll talk a little bit about how I came to running, or how running came to me, depending on spiritual about it. I've had my ups and downs with running, and just the people say, "Oh, you are an athlete," and sometimes I really, really question that. And I've had times when I've been running and doing lots of races, and then I've I've run 6 marathons before. I don't even know how many I've signed up for. I've had some injuries. There was some COVIDing, and there was all kinds of other stuff. So, and I tend to be a very all or none person, and I will give you an update on that. I was not, I wasn't running at the time, and there was definitely some embarrassment and some shame about that, and clearly, that impacts mental health and physical health, and it was just sort of a reminder of that, and I wasn't in that group right now then. So I did not want to draw I didn't want to draw a line about it. But you were very persistent. You were very pleasant about it, but you were persistent. And at a certain point, I knew we literally were at a point. I said, either I'm going to say no for good, or I need to come up with something. And I thought it would be really, really not particularly rich material to mine the running habits of someone who wasn't running. So, and I'm signed up for the Chicago Marathon this year, and so I knew I had to start training. So it was part of a catalyst of getting myself back into running. So like 6 weeks ago, I got back into it. I mean, I literally had not run since October, and I started 6 weeks ago, so that would be the very beginning of April. Had not run anything since then. And today I went out and I did 10 miles, all or none.
See, okay. Did you by chance listen to course, you may have by the time this airs. But last week I had an episode on with Dr. Justin Aquino, Doctor of Physical Therapy. And one of the things that we talked about is when you're injured or when you're not running and you view yourself as a runner, that actually can cause some type of identity issues. Because you were like, why do you want me on the show? I'm currently not doing anything. Well, that doesn't now, okay, because you're a runner and you've stopped because you're taking a break, because you've had an injury, I don't like, well, I used to be a runner. No, you're just not doing it right now.
Yeah.
And it also directly leads to the starting over is harder than starting.
You had mentioned this a couple weeks ago, and I was reminded of that. Because when you're starting over, it's like, oh, this is a lot to do. But there's also that's when you don't, then you throw on the weight of, but I have failed to do it. So here's a mountain, a daunting mountain, and a pile of something of disappointment and shame behind you. So it's a bad valley. So yeah, no, it's true. It's so funny being back into running right now. Like I was just looking my first week, I was doing like 14-minute splits. I mean, and it was, and I've dropped exactly. And this is, I mean, everyone is at their pace and that they're running, and I believe me, and then you look at the speedy people at the beginning of the pack, and I look, it's shifted in the last few weeks, and I'm like, I've dropped some weight, so that makes there's sort of a compounding effect when you're getting back. But I mean, now I'm like, it's going to be like, okay, I've got the 6 weeks sort of like getting into it, being enthusiastic. And there's a lot of talking by myself. I'm like, why did you not do this? I literally want to record something this week, recording, and I want to send it to people saying, David, you've been out running. You've had endorphins. Remember, endorphins make people happy. And happy people don't kill their husbands. Not that I have a husband, but Elle Woods was right. So and I look at, sort of feeling better and literally enjoying it. Often, people talk about it's not good to say, oh, I have to run today. It's I get to run today. And now I'm like, oh, I actually get to run today. But it does take getting back into it. So yes, your point is well taken, and I appreciate it now. And I appreciate your persistence. You've contributed in part to sort of my getting back on the horse.
2 points. 2 points. First of all, please describe what's behind you that you were joking about earlier.
This is so funny. So I live in Old Town, and the lakefront is over there. And what's really behind me is the lakefront path. And the reason that I set myself here is not just I look on the lakefront. That is how close the running path is to me, and I have no excuse not to. So this is hey, Mr. Runner, sometimes Mr. Fatty, you should be out there. So that's why that's.
Well,
I'm using shame as a powerful tool.
Before I moved, the joke was I was half a mile from the running store where one of my groups would meet every week, and I actually sometimes twice a week. I never went, never. They're half a mile. I could walk there. I could run there. No. And then when I announced I was moving, and I didn't move far, I moved 15 minutes like south-ish. Someone was like, oh, well, we hope to see you, still coming up to the store on the track. And I was like, well, I didn't come before. And I was half a mile away, so I wouldn't expect it now.
Well, sometimes there's an inverse reaction. The person who's closest is always the most late.
But I will say that it's interesting how you're not the first person who has said to me that because of the podcast, because of a conversation, because of this, they've rethought, the fact that they've been trying to restart or, hit a goal and do this and moving in a positive direction. And I myself have not moved in a positive direction. I'm still not running, but I did yesterday take my bike out, which has had a flat for 6 months. And I went for a bike ride yesterday.
And you're still with us.
Well, it was a short bike ride.
You know what? It's
Yeah.
it's a lot better than the other bike rides over the last.
Well, I signed up for a dualathon.
Oh, okay.
Dualathon. I don't know what is that. I don't know what I'm saying.
Duathlon. I
Dualathon.
guess biathlon, but I think that requires arms.
You're right, because riding the bike doesn't require arms. Okay, so let's.
My goodness.
Sorry. Happens at least once or twice an episode.
Okay.
All right. So, what caused you? No, I don't want to do that. Okay. So, you've done 6 marathons.
Yeah.
Have they all been Chicago?
5 Chicago, 1 New York.
Why New York?
Well, an important part of my running story is, maybe I'll get a little bit more into that. Is a lot of my running has been with the Team to End AIDS, affiliated with the AIDS Foundation of Chicago, and that's been an important part of my running and a lot of enthusiasm. And one of the fundraising things they do is actually they have some slots for New York. So with my friends, everyone thought it's a good idea. I mean, it's so funny. Things you wouldn't have thought of before running. It's like, oh, okay, I'll do a run locally. It sounds fun. And then you're like, oh, I might do one in the suburbs. But then suddenly going on vacation and running. No, that's crazy. That never would have occurred to me. And I was like, oh, it sounded fun. And it is New York, and I'm glad I did it. And we won't run it again. I mean, Chicago is like the easiest marathon. It's like we're so coddled. Logistically is what I'm speaking. Logistically, it is. So
I'm still gonna make a face only because for you with your location, it may be
right.
easier.
That's true, and also running with an organization that provides amazing logistics. I mean, I not only do they support in terms of training and emotional support, the headquarters are right at Roosevelt University. It's right at, it's like 2 blocks from the start line, 3 blocks from the start line. So it makes it even easier for me. So yes, I know not everyone has that, but you can run and support the amazing organization. Needs it now more than ever. And you get to participate in that. But yes, you look at the New York Marathon, you finish it, you're in the middle of Central Park, you have to walk another mile at the end before you can get into a taxi or get into the subway. I don't want a bonus mile.
Okay, so I have to tell you this. Lauren, of course, doesn't acknowledge that there's a Boston Marathon. That's one thing. You know how at the end of the race you get the Mylar blankets?
Yes.
And everybody's walking around like they're wrapped in tinfoil? Well, she's now calling you all baked potatoes.
Well, it was either that or a hot dog.
Oh. Yeah.
That's a little more of a Chicago.
So when you do the Chicago Marathon, you're a hot dog. Everywhere else, you're a baked potato. I guess she was in Pittsburgh last week, and she happened to be there just on the day that they're running a marathon down there, and she's like, "Look at all the baked potatoes." Okay, all right. Tell me more about the charity you run for, because I have 2 friends who are also on that team as well. I think we've talked about that.
So the Team to End AIDS is affiliated with the AIDS Foundation of Chicago, and it is it's the endurance program that is affiliated with AFC. And the biggest event is the Chicago Marathon, but they do other events, the half marathon. They have slots for New York, the New York half. They do all kinds of different events. So they have an extensive training program, but also fundraising. Basically supporting those with or impacted directly by HIV/AIDS. And it's an extensive number of resources that they provide the community. And, I'm happy that I get to do my little share. I mean, I think, it's amazing the amount of fundraising that is affiliated with running. And every couple of years, they've had someone from the Chicago Marathon has talked about the amount of money that is raised. I mean, literally in the billion that
Hmm.
is raised for the AIDS Foundation. And, you know, this is now, I've done whatever number of races. This year I'll hit about $50,000 that I've raised.
Wow.
So that's
It's
basically though, because people are like, he's still running. He's not dead. I think there is a great fear in those who support me that if they don't contribute, it might be the year I die. They feel really bad. So I use that for good and not for evil, and it's working. So I appreciate that. I'm not dead yet.
whatever marathon you are using to fundraise. It's just so interesting that you are doing something good for yourself because the exercising and all that does help your mental and your physical state, but you're able to also create good through that.
Yeah, no, and to be honest, it's not a small part of the accountability. I mean, there are definitely times that I've wanted to drop out that I might have on my own, but I've made a commitment. In some cases, I would have had to have come up with the money myself if I dropped out.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it's an additional accountability tool, and I need a lot of those. Because these organizations have limited slots, so you really, one wants to support the not just support the organization, but sort of be true and be true to your word. So yeah, but it keeps me honest, and that's not a small.
And I actually I don't know this as a general rule, so I'm going to ask. So, as a charitable organization, they get a certain amount of bibs, and then
Yep.
you like, do they
So
get are
the
they
number I
gifted
don't know
them
the percentage. Pardon?
are they gifted them from the marathon and
They're
then
given it by, yes, Bank of America, marathon organization organizers give them a certain number of slots. I mean, huge number of slots. I don't know. If it were a third, it wouldn't shock me. Just based, looking at the field out there and the number of people
mm,
supporting different organizations. I mean, for some organizations, it is that is they're one of their largest fundraising tools. Some other organizations, it's not so big a place, but it's so dollar wise, it's not so important. But it's just sort of a great visibility thing. And it's the first organization I ran with was actually St. Jude. They do amazing
mm.
work with children, and they do an extensive national program of endurance events. So that's a big part of it.
Now, are you, because I don't understand necessarily how this part of it all works. I guess obviously, of course, depends on the charity. They all have different levels, I suppose. Um, so each charity each one would be, say you have to raise $5,000 for the bib, and you sign up and you say absolutely I will raise $5,000 for the bib, and if you're unable to raise that, you have to actually front the rest.
That's the general understanding. So yeah,
Okay.
if you come up short, I mean, some organizations you look at. Some events like at Boston Marathon, people bid on how much they will raise for an organization. They'll say, okay, I'll do 9,000. Oh, I'll do 10,000. And they distribute their slots. I mean, those are such shares slots. And so few organizations get them. So that's really aggressive and I mean, for a good cause, but it's tough. And not, I've raised money. I've had people who've been very generous in supporting me. Um, and I felt very fortunate about that. It's hard. Not everyone's able to do that. It wasn't my money.
Well, it is, and especially, I mean, I'm not knocking the Chicago Marathon in any way, shape, or form. I am, of course, going to go on my rant about world majors for a second, because look, all I'm saying is that some of them, you can qualify, but most of them it's not a qualifier. And even if you qualify, that doesn't mean you're going to be in. There's lotteries. But I think it was when I was learning about the Tokyo Marathon, the process of trying to get like a charity bib was similar to having to bid, but you had no idea who or how much you're bidding against. So it's a blind auction, I guess you could say, and that for someone who just wants to do it out of pure enjoyment, I think it just kind of it creates exclusivity where we really want to have inclusivity
No, I
from a
think
financial standpoint.
it's totally understandable. I mean, I think that, I mean, it's tough. I mean, they're just, you look some of these fields, Chicago, we have such a large field. Um, it is a lot easier to get into. If you look at London, um, those, Tokyo, there are just so few slots. So no, it makes it tough. And, giving a slot to one is taking it from someone else. So there are definite trade-offs for that. So it's tough. And, you know,
And
I'm
the
never,
and the only reason I talk about the world majors, and I have plenty of friends who are 6-star finishers, and good for them. That was their journey. That's what they chose to do. I'm sure they had their reasons for wanting to do it. But it's when they started, or well, now that Australia is, it's not officially like for a 7-star, but now that it's a world major, I'm like, who can afford all that? First of
it's
all,
no, it's expensive. I mean, and part of me, I mean, it's like part of me, and this is the lazy side of me. I'm like, I don't want to spend 3 of my days on vacation. If I'm on an 8-day vacation, 3 of my days are running. I mean, you're showing up, you're getting your bid, you're doing the race, and then you're recovering. I mean, that's fun. I mean, doing it in New York, I've been in New York before. It wasn't, so I didn't feel like I was quite sacrificing so much. But if I was going to Australia, or Tokyo, that's a big commitment. However, and, you look at, I know people. I've seen people on your podcast. That's their important thing, and that drives them, and it's a motivator. I feel like what's happened with world majors, there's definitely a who moved my cheese. Um, I know some people who've done the 6 and now they're like, oh, do some more, but such is life.
well, because everything's always got to be pushed farther and farther. It's almost similar to like Boston lowering their times. Okay, you had to be this fast, now you have to be this fast, now you have to be, and it keeps getting harder and harder and harder. But yet more people are still, qualifying to get in. So that's not deterring anything. How did you start your running journey?
Okay. I had kind of run a couple random races in my 30s. Like in my 20s, it would be hard to come up with a very high number of runs that I'd done. I mean, I worked out very intermittently. I'd done 1 or 2 in my 30s. But when I was 45, I was on a vacation, and on New Year's Day decided to take a hike a very, very high mountain. Started at 4 o'clock in the morning. And as I was hiking up this mountain, which was very, very steep, I was puking. I mean, that's how bad it was. And one of the things was the stunning view that you were supposed to have for sunrise. So that's why we were going there. And then we arrived to the summit. I had, been throwing up for the entire trip up the mountain, and it was overcast. There was no view. We were in the clouds. And then we walked down, and it was just awful. And I was just like, you are 45 years old. You are not 85, 95 years old. You have to get it together. This is not. It was just. I mean, it was just a very. I mean, I knew that I wasn't in shape, but it was just this incredible physical manifestation of that. So I went back and I started running a little bit, and then I don't know. I think I just saw something, and I'm like, you know what? I had looked at one point about doing a half marathon and doing with St. Jude. So they have a pretty extensive program. I signed up for that, and that would have been, yeah, 17, yeah, no, 2016. And I did a half marathon. I did I miss you, the Chicago Rock and Roll half marathon in July. The weather could be a little hot, but it was such a fun little race with all the music and stuff like that. So that was the first real race I did. So I did probably a 12-week training program. It was not extensive, but that was sort of having that sort of short to midterm goal worked really well for me. Having a goal, I had an organization I committed to. I would have had to have paid. Had not. So that got me to the race, and it got me over the finish line, and that was my first race. And I did sort of continue running after that, and it was kind of ups and downs as always. And a
But
very good friend.
okay, so who were you running with?
That summer that I trained by myself. I think I downloaded whatever their training program was, and had some success. And I think the newness of it made it kind of exciting, and there wasn't really a sense of, oh, I failed to run. There wasn't the I had not been on the wagon, so I had not yet fallen off of it. Watch this space; it's coming. Um, and so yeah, and then sort of went through the winter and stuff, and then a good friend of mine, whom I met through the same circle as with your sister, my friend Joe had moved here from Boston, and he and his husband had started running, both in their 40s also. And his husband Graham, a friend of mine, is a super fast runner. Joe and I are in the not quite as fast field, and he's the person who introduced me to the AIDS Foundation and said, we should run with T2, and that's how we did it, and signed me up. So that was in 2017, and that was that first year I was really I was terrified of it. I was so diligent about the training program because I thought death was imminent if I did not do all my training runs. And it was training with a group. I mean, a really great group of people. I never expected to meet the friends that I did. I mean, today I was just out of breakfast with one of those people. It was I guess as people had talked about this, but it wasn't until I did it and saw. So I mean, I have it deepened my friendship with my friend Joe and several other people, some of my closest friends in Chicago, because I lived in Boston until I was 40, and I came back. So a lot of people I might have met in my 20s and 30s, I had not come into my life in Chicago. So it was a gift. The social aspect was a gift that I never.
Well, I don't think there's anybody who's come on the show yet who has not brought up the importance of the running community for reasons other than training. You form friendships, you have connections. I always joke that, when you're training with a group or running a race with a group, whether it's a half, whether it's a full 2 hours, you do a long run, it's 3 hours, but there's all the time before, there's all the time after, there's, all the time that you're just connecting with other people. That's the time you're not spent running. That's the time you're forming those relationships with people.
Yeah. I mean, one long run at a time, and it sort of built up, and and they've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of my training or lack thereof. Some of my more embarrassing moments out, on the path. Oh my goodness, I feel like I've teased something.
I'm sorry, what?
Have I teased something here? No, it's so funny. I think one of my favorite things, and so I try to eat like a little bit of yogurt and blueberries or something before I go on a long run in the summer. And it's really early. It's 4:30. It's 4:45, and I reached into the refrigerator and I grabbed some yogurt and put it in the blueberries into a bowl and shoveled it and down. Probably fell back asleep. Then I made to meet my friends. We were running, and about 1 mile in, I suddenly let go a bluish purplish arc. I had failed to realize that in the back of the refrigerator was a white expired container of yogurt that had gone bad. So yes, people still talk about the trip. So we all have to bring material,
I do appreciate the visual.
It's better to show than to tell, but unfortunately I don't have any visual.
I have to admit, and this is where sometimes I have to repeat that, if anybody decides to do anything because of something they hear on this podcast, it's on you. Because I'm not 100% sure yogurt, for me,
right? No, I mean,
as a dairy item, is necessarily pre-run fuel.
Right. It had not to that date been problematic. It has not subsequently been problematic. That was just a special convergence of things, cultures that were beyond their time. But yeah, but there you go. I mean, it's part of the fun. It's part of the tale.
Well, the thing is that we were at breakfast. I met up with some friends. They had run a thing in Schaumburg last weekend, and I met them after Fords for breakfast. And one of them had a cramp in their leg, as one does after running
No.
a race. So there's 7 of us sitting at a table. He's standing up. Okay. I'm literally giving him the salt shaker because I want him to pour salt in his hand and lick the salt like he's having a margarita, whatever, because that will help in that moment. And one of the other friends was like, yeah, so we're a table full of runners. That does not look odd to us, but I'm sure somebody else is probably like, what
People
are they
probably didn't
doing?
think he was licking that. He was probably licking his palms like a dog.
Right. Well, he refused it, which never refused that.
That's on him.
Hmm. And he kept cramping the whole meal. Mark, you know who you are. Anyway, so okay, so you ran in 2017. So
Yep.
okay, but it sounds like that when you say like all in, okay, how many like shorter distances have you done?
I've probably done like half a dozen half marathon, like official half marathons, I think, probably. And it was like 2018, that was my sort of gold star year. Like I was really into it. I ran probably 3 or 4 halves that year. I did the F3. I mean, I started the year out and it was like I was on program. I mean, that was my PR was that year. And I was training regularly, and then you get the bonus of then, oh, you're healthier, you weigh less, you run faster. It's a bonus. So that was sort of my high watermark in terms of training and racing. So yeah, that was.
Well, first shout out to F3 because they I will continue to register for that race year after year, regardless of weather.
Yeah, I mean, it's in Chicago, and these days, you will see all the weathers over a couple of years.
Okay, but so it sounds like you weren't into like 5Ks or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm all or none. Starting with small amounts is yeah. This is a fundamental flaw. It probably will not be rectified in the time of my life, but
So no
it's like
5K,
no.
no 10K.
The thing about I'm lazy. You spend more time getting logistically to a 5K than you spend running it.
I don't disagree there because
That's for
you know
me. I understand the value of it, and I've had some 5K. I mean, if I could swing around camera, I could show you the Chicago History Museum across the street. I'll run the Jingle Bell Run because I can see the start line.
well when we talk about logistics, and if you're talking about like smaller races like the 5Ks, the 10Ks, those tend to be not necessarily in Chicago. Those are out, those are about, those
Right.
are, I know, God forbid, in the suburbs, you have to,
No, I've done
get
the
there.
Schaumburg. I've done the Turkey Trot. I've done that 3 times. I love that.
The one at Bussy,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I did that one. But it's interesting because there are a lot of people I know that either the lower quantities are their running distances, like a 5K is their favorite, a 10K is their favorite. They'll never, ever, ever do a marathon. And then you have people who will only do half marathon and longer.
I mean, it's sort of the bigger is better. I mean, I think I'm finally growing up and realizing moderation. It's sort of like I've had different times. I've worked with a couple different running coaches in the time of my training, and my thought of, oh, I need to go and I need to get so much better. And worked with some great coaches, and I did take some direction. I didn't take a lot of direction, and I was not um in terms of it's like the last 6 weeks I went from zero. I mean, 6 weeks ago I had not run since October, and today I ran 10 miles. That got me excited. It got me motivated. It probably was a little stupid. Somehow my body, it's not unhappy with me. I didn't eat bad yogurt, so that helped. Um, but like right now, it's so funny because I thought to myself, you know, I've got some stuff for work. I need to take some photos next week, and I'm going on a trip with some friends, and I wanted some good photos. I mean, I literally was like, you know what? I've got a lot of fat vacation photos. I don't need any more of those, which is a little bit, but it's it cracks me up sometimes that I'm like, why don't people say, what, you're not running? I mean, actually, I was thinking that I would like to record something this week saying, hey, David, this is David. You've been running lately and you've been feeling really good. The endorphins are going. You're sleeping well. My Garmin watch is giving me very high sleep scores. I'm very validated by all those little metrics. You've not been running. The weight's coming back. Remember what the running's like. I want to record this. I actually want to have an app, which when it sees you're not running and the weight is going up, that video pops up. Hey, David.
It's
I
like
think there's going to be this
your morning motivational message.
from myself.
I, you know, so it's interesting because, we're getting to like what drives you to be able to accomplish your goal. Accountability is a big driver for you to get something done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Accountability for me, no. See, I don't have that as a motivator. I think the trouble is sometimes, you're motivated by something for a certain amount of time, and then that stops being the motivator because that can happen. And I haven't found a new motivator to start running again because I'm quite happy now as the spectator, as the pod host, as the support staff, and I find that more fun than the actual act of running.
Yeah, that's very relatable. I mean, believe me, as someone who's has asked for help and not taken it and not processed it well in terms of running, I've paid for it. I mean, I paid for running, not taking direction. And yeah, I mean, I'm sort of at an interesting inflection point, I think, with my running. This might be my last marathon. I mean, I haven't made any decisions. Half marathons seem like a much more civilized distance than a full marathon, and certainly less destructive. But it's funny. There's no other exercise I've encountered that does the thing that running does. I mean, in terms of weight management, um, in terms of in mental health, it does a lot. I mean, there's a lot going on with it. And then also, when doing training and such, the social aspect of it, it's so funny. I'm a realtor, salesperson. I've never been a very aggressive person. I have actually ended up with more clients through running than perhaps any other source, and I've never solicited any. People work with people they like and relate to, and that's something within that community, within the running community. And most of these people are people who started running in their 40s and 50s, and so we're not going to be qualifying for Boston. That's not our driver, but it's sort of we're late to the party, but starting to enjoy it sometimes more than.
And well, that's completely true. It's one thing. There's a couple people I interviewed that I totally admitted that I was like, I'm a little intimidated to talk to this person. I totally admitted it.
Yeah, I've heard you
But
mention that.
at the end of the day, I think sometimes we label the faster, speedier, more consistent, all these attributes to that someone has as their definition of the runner.
Right.
Is not like our definition. Like my definition is, not right now. There's a lot of things, and I think we're not the same, but we're more the same than we know, because we all suffer from the same. I said it before. We all suffer from nutrition issues. We suffer from injury issues. We suffer even if I have somebody who looks at me and says they wish they could be as fast as me, I'm looking at somebody else wishing I could be as fast as them. But that person is also looking at the person in front of them, wanting to be faster. And there's no difference in that desire.
No,
just
I mean,
because
comparison is a very dangerous game. And it's one tends to lose. I mean, it's funny, looking at people who are. I mean, I certainly have amazing respect and give props to people who are doing 6-minute, 7-minute miles, and I'm impressed by it and their commitment. To be honest, I'm impressed by the people who are knocking out 15 minutes, 16-minute miles and doing a marathon. They work much harder and longer in a marathon. Those speedy people, they're having their beer within, like 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Those other people are grinding it out. There's a level of commitment to that that's, this last year, I didn't run Chicago. I spectated it. Um, you know, goes in the back once again. Right, I can no reason to be lazy. That the marathon goes in by my back door, literally. And I stayed to the last people running and just encouraging those people. And because, I mean, I know what encouragement is, and I was just that is, we talk about having commitment and sticking with things. Um, that's a manifestation of that. I think it's incredible.
Yeah, they say, if you want to learn about, I don't know what the line is, something about if you want to learn about human nature and all that, you should watch a marathon.
Yep.
And so I'm going to tell a little story that I've been holding on to from 2 weeks ago when I was up volunteering at the Wisconsin Marathon. We were doing pack and pickup, and these cute girls came in, and they're all bubbly. Oh, we're all doing the 5K, and it's a great thing. It's lovely, wonderful. And then from behind them, I can see this girl come in, and she is sobbing, like sobbing. And the people who are having a good time, they move away, and she comes up to me, and I'm prepared for a lot of things. I'm prepared for I need to step down because I'm hurt. I'm prepared for can I have my stuff I need to drop out? But no, she was crying because it was her first marathon. And so, okay, I gave her her stuff. And I mean, the Wisconsin Marathon pack and pickup, there isn't a lot of people there at any given time. So we have a lot more time to talk to people, get their stories. I took a picture of her with her girls. There's like 7 of them plus her. And so I made it like a mental note of it. And the next day at the race itself, a couple of her friends passed the finish line. They were trying to be the last people to finish the 5K. They actually hopped off course at some point and got coffee, and I thought that was classic. And I had a little conversation, and I was like, why, I thought it was a bridal thing, like
Sure.
she's going to have a wedding and it was like that. And I found out that she was having some personal issues, and she was just so overwhelmed that, all her people were there. Okay. Great. And I got the backstory. Great. Well, when you work a smaller marathon like that, you are there from the first runner out to the last runner in. And at some point she finished. And I walked over, and her friend said to her, she's like, "Oh my God, see, there she is. She's here again. She's been following your whole journey." And that woman gave me the most intense, real hug for like 30 seconds. And it changed my view, in that moment too, of like watching other people's journeys. It's just you forget how other roles that you can play still support the people.
Indeed, yeah.
That's my little story. Maybe I'll leave it in, maybe I won't. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think the thing is, and you've embraced sort of the wider aspect and sort of the running community, and it's not just in the pitter patter people. And I think that that you look at the logistics. I mean, I'm a big believer that the happiest day of the year, the most wonderful day of the year in Chicago is Marathon Day. And it's not just because, oh, I love it. I've gotten to marathon. There is more positive energy. The number of people supporting strangers and having been a recipient of that, having been a giver of that, when I haven't run, I've gone a couple clips, check places near me, but then gone down to like mile 23 where the crowds tend to be a little bit thinner, and having gone down and just giving shout outs to people. So the opportunity for sort of, giving to a stranger and that recognition, and sometimes you get a look and it's like, wow, you really connected, and that's maybe what they needed then. So yeah, no, I mean, I think, Rachel, you talk about, you may not be a pitter patter person right now, you may not be doing this, but the running community is And whether it's a person who looks at it, what spectates one time a year, or is
Hmm.
working all kinds of races and volunteering, and we're lucky that we get to be exposed to a wide number doing that. I have, I've been unexpected by the gifts of that.
So how long did you stop running for all told?
Which time?
Like this, like, all right. So, well, no, you stopped in October. Or no,
I mean, I
you
didn't run
hadn't
much of
run.
last year. It's so funny, I look at I now have a decade's worth of info from Training Peaks. And Training Peaks, they should call it, the app should be Training Peaks and Training Valley and Training Flatline.
Wait, Training Peaks is an app?
Training Peaks? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
like Strava. Yeah, no, and it just aggregates, your data from your Garmin or whatever. And yeah, no. So no, I mean, you look at the last marathon I ran was in 2023, and it was by far my slowest. I, was doing pretty well. That was like I was just looking at the last times that I was running faster was that I was on vacation. I did some great longish runs the end of October. I was on vacation with my sister. She gave me COVID. And then I had, for the first time in my life, because we had a great trip, I was basically on the Henry VIII diet. I went out, I did my 18-mile run. That was just enough to kick in my first gout attack of my life. So I did the long run, and I couldn't walk for 3 weeks. So that was set on my last race. So after that, I ran a little bit. I was working with a coach, and then sort of petered out. So yeah, so I'd been off for the majority of, 24. I did very little.
And okay, so I mean, I'll only take a little bit of credit for getting you back.
Yeah, no, I have no.
I'll take a little bit.
Yeah, there were. I mean, it forced some accountability. I mean, I was like, I needed to have something, some story of some sort, coming out and saying, "Hey, I don't run."
Well, okay. So when you were not running, you didn't identify as a runner.
No, yeah, probably. I mean, or a failed
Like
runner.
when you weren't actively running, if someone came up to you and said, "Are you a runner?" What would you have said?
I probably said I used to run, or I haven't been running. I haven't.
Oh, I like. Okay, so no, I haven't been running.
Yeah, I
Because I
would be
will do
very
so in
candid
the
about it.
future.
I look at some point, 2 or 3 years in, and I think probably it was probably through G2's training. They said, you are an athlete. I mean, I never, grew up, was not, I was on the speech team. I never thought of myself, I rode crew in college at the University of Chicago. No, wasn't exactly, Oxford, and we weren't that fast, but I never thought of myself as an athlete. And it's like, no, you were an athlete, and not saying you were an athlete asterisk. You're an athlete, you're not an athlete class 3. It's you are. So
Well, because I have learned recently, or someone said this to me. Running is a sport that you can keep doing and doing and doing. There are some sports where physically you can't anymore. But running,
sure,
you can keep going and going. The only thing that can really stop you running is an injury.
sure.
That and there's always going to be that one injury that ultimately takes you out of running.
That's why I saved my body for 4 decades. It was really just planning ahead.
That was some good planning.
I had vision. I knew there was something out there. So yes, I do not have knee problems. I do not have hip problems. I had fresh legs.
All right. I know you had possibly prepared for this interview. Is there anything you prepared that we did not talk about?
I don't think so. No, I mean, I think it got me to watch more of your podcasts, and that was thing that was interesting was just the wide range of people you've spoken to. I mean, not sort of,
That's
and that has been, as people who were like what I would call sort of hardcore runners, and people who are more casual, and it's, I think that was, so that's good. So in terms of my preparation, no, I mean, I think that, as I said, I'm sort of at an interesting inflection point. I think it's trying to figure out what is running going to look like for me, what is exercise going to look forward to me, the mental health aspect of it. is huge. I mean, I feel very different than I did 6 weeks ago. I'm like, okay, I think I'm paying more attention to it now because I've seen. So yeah, I started off. I'm like, okay, I've got 6-8 weeks before I do this trip, and then I'm going on vacation. I'll do some running on vacation because it'll be fun and novel, and then I come back and it's training for the marathon. So that'll get me to June or July. I need to break these things into 4 or 6 week intervals, and try to figure out how do I continue that. And I'm paying more attention to that this year.
I think one thing that you pointed out to me about my own show that I actually am trying to do is you can look at like my list of guests, but yet we all fight the same battles.
Sure.
We're all the same. And it was like halfway through, I think, the first season that I started really dipping into more the mental side of it, because, you know, when people continuously talk about the fact that they're comparing themselves to someone else, now we've taken the physical out of it, and now it's just a mental game. And how can you win that mental game? If you figure out an answer,
yeah,
you can come back on the show and tell me. Oh, okay. Tell
No,
me the answer.
I don't know if I figured it out, but I think it's, you know, it requires a certain level of grounding, a little bit of humility, and, you know, just sort of right size your running and everything about it. You know, it's, you know, you think when you're running, you know, you don't want to be looking too far because that's way too long to get to the end of the marathon. And you don't want to be looking at your feet because you're going to trip and shuffle. Finding the right point in the horizon and keeping going. I mean, it's a physical manifestation, but it's also mental. And keeping the perspective. And it requires constant adjustment. I think I'm getting better at that. My times may end up not getting fast, but, you know, my big win will be like, okay, if I run through the marathon consistently through the training season and towards the end of the year, and I have a decent number of runs in, and I'm feeling healthy, that's a huge win. Oh, I don't know.
No, but it's managing your own expectations and remembering that those are the only expectations that matter. My expectations for you don't matter. Your expectations for me don't matter. Well, that's bad English right there.
Well, that's what editing
is. No,
you need to say about it again.
No, I don't. The grammar police isn't going to get me. But it's managing your expectations, and not only managing your expectations, but being gentle with yourself with your expectations, and acknowledging what you can and can't do.
Sure. I mean, I think those around us are going to be much more generous and kind in our expectations. Maybe we just need to pay more attention to them. So not paying attention to their running, but in the way that.
I'm sorry. It's
okay. Hi, Butter.
Speaking of not paying attention.
Yeah.
I think somebody just got a little jealous.
Oh, sorry.
Butter, at least turn around and say hello.
Hey, Butter.
No. This is it. Like you know how they loaf and they turn their little things, their knuckles over?
Yep.
He's loafed on me now. So
assume the position.
So anyway, David, thank you for being on.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you finally taking the time. I would like to have you back after you finish your marathon.
Okay.
Because I want to see how you feel now versus how you feel at the end. Sure.
I may not deserve a whole show. Maybe I could be a segment. We can go back.
You can be a segment.
Exactly.
You can be whatever you want.
We'll see. We'll see how much material I come with. I mean, I've used decades worth of running material just for this one episode. I don't know what I can come up with by October.
It'll be fabulous. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for supporting the Flying Pig project. Embrace the crazy to unlock a world of possibilities. We are now on YouTube, so you can listen on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Of course, if you're already listening to this, you know that. But if you're listening and not watching, you can watch on Spotify and YouTube. Thank you very much for listening. The fireworks went off before. Here we go. We got confetti this time.